the acceptable tactic, the acceptable tactics, the acceptable covert tactic, the acceptable covert tactics, the acceptable overt tactic, the acceptable overt tactics, the acceptable indirect tactic, the acceptable indirect tactics, the acceptable direct tactic, the acceptable direct tactics, the acceptable soft tactic, the acceptable soft tactics, the acceptable firm tactic, the acceptable firm tactics, the acceptable hard tactic, the acceptable hard tactics, the acceptable beginning tactic, the acceptable beginning tactics, the acceptable middling tactic, the acceptable middling tactics, the acceptable ending tactic, the acceptable ending tactics, the acceptable private tactic, the acceptable private tactics, the acceptable public tactic, the acceptable public tactics, the acceptable silent tactic, the acceptable silent tactics, the acceptable written tactic, the acceptable written tactics, the acceptable photo tactic, the acceptable photo tactics, the acceptable audio tactic, the acceptable audio tactics, the acceptable video tactic, the acceptable video tactics, the acceptable past tactic, the acceptable past tactics, the acceptable present tactic, the acceptable present tactics, the acceptable future tactic, the acceptable future tactics,